All right, hi everybody. Everybody working from home today, which is actually everybody. So group A, you guys already saw this yesterday, so you don't need to watch this video. This is just me going over the ways of knowing. But group B and all of my distance ed kids, please watch this video. So you are going to work today. Hopefully yesterday you followed the instructions, and in our team, which let me just pop up a screen share real quick so you can see. So in our team, you should have seen an assignment that had 2 days worth of stuff. In the future, I'm going to split that out by day. But yesterday, when I put this one up, I was still trying to figure out when Mr. Nigro had arranged to meet with everybody. So I did it in 2 days. In the future, it will be 1 day at a time. Okay. So next week, you'll see a lesson 3 and a lesson 4. This had 1 and 2 on it. So if you go to your assignments and you can see it here, hopefully you guys filled in the lesson 1 stuff from yesterday, or sorry, the lesson 2, the 828 stuff. That should have been the home day stuff. So if I look at this assignment, you can actually see that it is from our class notebook. I'm actually going to go on this way. That's easier for me. So our class notebook feature, you can actually go into class notebook and get this assignment via there, but to actually turn it in, you have to go in through the assignments portal and turn it in. Now it should auto save for you. So as you're in class notebook, give me just a second. Sorry, you guys know how the district computers are pretty slow. So as I'm in class notebook and I'm in lessons, you'll see here I have these 2 lessons. They're not uploaded yet. You won't see them, but this is the lesson we're on today. So I want you to make sure that whenever, if you are group A, you are ahead of group B by 1 day. So you guys flip-flop. So group A did this in-class learning day yesterday. Group B, this is what we're working on today. Distance ed kids, you can work in either order because you guys are virtual all the time. So group B, you should have done the virtual learning day yesterday. Group A is doing this today. So I hope that you guys all took care of that. It is due today by 1 o'clock so that I can take your guys' attendance. The assignment each day will be due by 1 o'clock on class days. So next week we have class, I believe it is, let's see, Wednesday, Thursday. So Wednesday, you'll have to upload your assignment by 1 o'clock. Thursday, you'll have to upload an assignment by 1 o'clock. And that includes the stuff we do in class. So I actually gave the A day time in class to do the reflection parts of the in-class learning day. You'll need to do the same thing today. So here's what we're going to do today. In class, we would have done this, but we're just going to do it via Zoom because that's the way that our society works today, and because it's super smoky out. I'm surprised they waited so long to call it. It was awful last night. All right, so here's what I want you to do. I want you to think about, and you're just going to reflect since you might not have a partner to work with at home. I want you to think about 1 to 2 facts that you know is or are true. And how do you know that that fact is true? Did you Google it? Is it something you can see? Has it been proven to you? And what I want you to do is I want you to think about why you know that that fact is true. And I want you to jot down what you know about that fact right here. Before you finish watching this video, I want you to pause it and do this exercise because I want you to think about it before I introduce the concepts of ways of knowing. So pause the video right now and think about your fact and jot down your ideas. And then when you're ready, hit play and we'll continue. All right, hopefully you actually paused the video and you've already done the exercise. So now I want to introduce you to the ways of knowing. There are several ways of knowing, and these are TOK terms. So these ways of knowing have to do with how we know what we know and why we know that something is true. So if you think about it, language. Language is a way that we know things. So one example in class yesterday is one of the students in class had a shirt on that said Booster Colts, or said Booster Tennis. And his fact was, I am wearing a Booster Tennis sweatshirt. And so we kind of talked about, well, how do you know that? If I don't speak English, how do I know that your shirt's a Booster Colts sweatshirt that's for tennis? Language allows us to access information in a different way than if we don't have language or if we speak a different language. So knowledge has to do with language. The way that we communicate and the way that we are looking at different systems has to do with language. So knowledge is built upon an assumption of certain communication or language. It's built upon the idea that communication and language are shared, or that there is some kind of middle ground. So it's a really important way that we communicate knowledge. It could be as simple as me telling you something, like, hey, did you know school's canceled today because of the smoke? Now, I just told you that. You can choose to believe me or not. Some of you might say, oh, really? And get on your computer and Google and see that, oh, wow, Dr. Gross is right. It is canceled today because of smoke. So language is really important. Another way of knowing is sense perception. So a lot of you responded to the Mr. Nigro's first knowledge question, and you guys brought up a couple of examples about knowing. And I really like that you guys were already thinking in these terms of the ways of knowing. Several of you brought up examples that include sense perception. So sense perception normally has to do with the senses. So sight, touch, smell, taste, or hearing. There is such thing as like a sense of heat, a sense of pain, movement, balance, etc. These things are all also linked to memory, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So right now, just sense perception. If I touch something and it's warm, I know that it's hot or warm. If I walk outside and I get goosebumps, I know that it's cold. But I could walk outside and get goosebumps, and my husband could walk outside in shorts and not be cold at all. So I know that it's cold. He knows that it's not cold. So sense perception also has to do with our own perspectives, but it is a way of knowing. And again, memory ties in with sense perception a lot. So we'll talk about that one in a little bit. The next way of knowing is emotion. So emotion, just down here. Emotion is the way that we feel the world, right? And a lot of people might think, you know what, emotions are irrational, that's not fact. And if you're a really analytical thinker, you might think these ways of knowing are kind of wonky. Like, you know what you know because it's a fact, right? Logic, reasoning. And that's okay, but those aren't the only ways of knowing. Emotions actually can help us get a sense of cultural or social experiences and behaviors. But we think about social, ethical, and political knowledge and how those things help us to form an understanding of the world around us. So the way that we integrate ourselves into the world around us really is impacted by our emotions, and that helps us to form our ideas, and that helps us to form our knowledge base. Now, I know that a lot of us think of knowledge as fact, but remember that fact to you might be different than fact to me. Now, there are certain undisputable facts, right? Like, if I look outside, if I go outside, I could take a temperature and I could undisputably say it is 69 degrees outside. However, where it becomes tricky is using language to categorize that. Is that cold? Is that warm? You can see I'm wearing a little cardigan today. At this time of year, I think it's pretty chilly in the morning, and I can't really leave my house without at least some kind of light sweater. Mr. Nigro's air conditioning seems to work better than anybody else's in the school. So every time I come into this room, I'm freezing. But when I go back to the IB office where I live, it is so hot in there right now because we don't have an air conditioning unit in there. And in the winter, sometimes it gets really cold because we don't have any vents in there. So my level of knowledge, my experience, my perception is different than yours. So the undisputable fact is the actual temperature. But whether that is cold or hot is a type of knowledge that's based on our own perceptions and our own perspective. The next one is reason. And reason is very closely linked to logic. It's deducing valid conclusions from given start points or premises. Okay, so it is one of those things that is based on logic. If I walk outside and I say it's freezing, but the water that's outside on the grass is not actually frozen. It's not freezing, right? To say that it's freezing would mean that there's actually frozen water outside. Reason is also linked to things that are factual, right? So I could give you a statistic about a fact, and I could say, hey, this fact is true. Let's say, I'm going to make up a statistic on the spot. This is not true, but let's just use it for an example. Let's say I say, all right, 50% of all teenage drivers will get into at least one car accident before their 20th birthday. That's a fact. How do I know that's true? Well, I can look at the data and then I can crunch the numbers. If there are 100,000 teen drivers in the United States every year, and there are 500,000 accidents, or sorry, 50,000 accidents, I can do the math really easily and say that's half, that's 50%. So there are ways that we can find logical, factual, statistical answers. And those are where reason comes in. So our way of knowing reason, a lot of students that one makes sense to them. Some of these other ones, not so much. Imagination. I have a lot of students that struggle with this idea. Remember that imagination is associated with creativity and problem solving. So even though you might think, oh, imagination has nothing to do with knowledge, it really does. Think about imagining how to solve a problem in science. You know, how do we send these astronauts safely to do an Earth orbit? We're having this problem with our ship. How do we creatively think to solve it? So creativity has a lot to do with knowledge, and imagination is the root of all creativity. So the way that we know, we have to think about, imagine if this would happen. And that's how we gain knowledge, right? We imagine something and then we try it out and it works or it doesn't work. And we gain knowledge either way. If it works, we gain knowledge about why it works and how it works and how our idea might be better, because we can always improve upon things, right? And that's where creativity comes in. And if it doesn't work, we learn a lot about it too. Why didn't it work? What might work better? So imagination is at the very basis of the way that we start creating knowledge. The next one is faith. The term faith is most frequently used to refer to religious faith, but it also can be used as trust. And so trust is a huge thing. If I tell you, so I have a bachelor's degree in English and political science, a master's degree in English, and a PhD. That's why I'm called Dr. Gross. Now I tell you all of this, and then I tell you a fact about education or about students, or about, I'm telling you about TOK right now. Why do you have faith that what I'm saying is true? Well, part of it is my ethos, my credibility. I'm a credible person because of my degrees. Teachers, you walk into a room and you assume that your science teacher knows a lot about science because they have at least a bachelor's, if not a master's. Most teachers all teachers have to have at least a bachelor's, but most of them have 2 bachelor's or even a master's degree. And some of them have doctoral degrees. Here at Worcester, we actually have 2 teachers, myself and Dr. Duranga, who have doctoral degrees. So you trust that we know what we're talking about. You trust that we're a credible source. So faith is about that. Don't get it confused with just religious faith, although that sometimes plays into it. It is about trust. How do we trust? How do we know something based on trust, right? And so if I tell you a fact, you might not necessarily Google it. You're going to trust that I know what I'm talking about. And so that's a way of knowing. Let me get into intuition, which is sometimes it's described as immediate cognition or knowledge, which is immediately evident without prior inference, evidence, or justification. I always think of things like a mother's intuition, or when you're out walking at night and you kind of get goosebumps and it's warm out, but you just feel like you have to turn around and look behind you, right? It's our body's kind of response system. Intuition can really tell us things that our brain is too slow to process. So if I hear something, but it's a very quiet noise, my brain might not process it as danger, but my body is still getting signals that something's going on. So intuition can be really powerful. Intuition can also has to do with ethics. So moral intuition that innate sense of right and wrong. Most of us have this innate sense of right and wrong. We know that it's wrong to lie. We know that it's wrong to kill or hurt other people on purpose. So we have this innate sense of morality, and that is where intuition comes in as a knowledge base. How do I know that it's wrong to kill? I just do. It's my intuition. It's my moral compass, right? The last one is memory. And memory is kind of knowledge and how it's been formed in our own perception and our own experiences. I talked about this a little bit earlier. But experience is so important in knowledge. And remember that memory plays into a lot of things like sense perception. Now, if I tell you a pan is hot on the stove, don't touch it, you'll get burned, and you've never been burned by a pan on the stove before, you're still likely to trust me because you might have been burned by something else and you know what hot is. You remember what it was like when you got burned from touching a hot poker that had been sitting in the campfire when you were trying to put a new marshmallow on your poker stick, right? So you know what burning is like, even if you haven't ever been personally burned by a pan on a stove. You have that memory of that experience. You have that trust in you. So you have that faith that I'm trying to protect you. And you also have that sense perception, that memory of that sense perception. So memory and habit have a lot to do with knowledge, not just knowledge in like what have my experiences been in the past that have taught me, but also procedural knowledge and how to perform actions. So you know how to ride a bike because it is something that is procedurally ingrained in you. You know it, and you could not ride a bike for 20 years and then hop back on one and still know how to do it. Same thing with driving a car. When you first begin driving a car, you don't have any kind of procedural knowledge, but you could stop driving a car, you can move to a big city and take the public transit, and then 20 years later hop in a car, you still know how to drive that car. So memory is really important. And all of these walks go hand in hand. They're not just all in a silo. So a lot of times it's, oh, I know this because of these 3 walks. You can kind of focus your discussion or your thoughts on one, but a lot of times you'll see that as you're describing why you know what you know or how you know what you know, several of these are coming into play, right? So the walks, the WOKs, that's what we're going to call them, walks, WOKs, ways of knowing, are a critical piece to theory of knowledge. This is what we're going to do by the next month or so. You will have all these memorized. Not because I'm going to give you a quiz, because I won't, but because you are going to use them every single class period almost. We will talk about walks. So we might watch a TED Talk and talk about walks. How do walks function in this topic? We'll read an article. How do walks function in this? So you will be using these all the time because you will be expected to know them like the back of your hand by next year when you have TOK with probably Mr. Bear. All right, so after that review, after watching this video, what I want you to do is write a couple of paragraphs, 6 to 8 sentences, on how you know the fact that you discussed earlier is true. But now I want you to think about it in terms of the terminology I just gave you. Pick 1 or 2 of those blocks and describe how it functions within your fact. That is your assignment for today. So you'll write this down here. And then you will submit this assignment by 1 o'clock. Your virtual learning day should already be done. If you're in group A, that's what you're working on today instead of what I just described, because that's what we did yesterday. So as soon as you're done with these 2 lessons, make sure that you submit them because that's how I take attendance. And that is all I have for you guys today. I hope that you have a fabulous weekend. We will not have class again until the next 1-2 day, which since today is 1-2-3 B day, Monday and Tuesday would be 4-5-6 days. So Wednesday I will see my A group. Thursday I will see my B group. Okay. I'm going to stop my share here. And I hope that you guys have a fabulous weekend, a great day. I will be here on campus because they don't call school until after Dr. Gross is already here. I was actually already in class before they called it. So I'll be here probably most of the day working with distance ed stuff for my other kiddos that I have. And if you have questions, shoot me a message on Team, or you can always email me. All right, guys, have a fabulous weekend, and I hope that the smoke clears out so you can actually enjoy some outdoor time this weekend. Happy knowledge.